Hello. How's it going? My name's Noam Zever. I'm a LOL YouTuber. Plays a lot of FF14. Today I really wanted to talk about the healer strike and kind of everything surrounding it, as it's been a pretty hot button topic for a lot of people lately. So I wanted to give my thoughts on it and kind of look at it from both sides and just sort of go from there. Um, Gameplay unrelated, just kind of having it, just going moving around. So really fast, I wanted to just talk about the healer strike. So for starters, I want to talk about a general description of the healer strike, opinions from both sides, and then I want to talk about my opinion. So let's go from the beginning. So number one, we got to talk about the issue. So let's talk about it as if you've never heard the issue before. Essentially, what happened was the media tour happened. Xenosis Vex, was invited to the tour. He is a tank main. He's a pretty popular streamer. Xeno made a video showing him doing the new dungeon, the 91 dungeon, with no healer. It was him. I believe it was Whoops, Arthur's, and Todd, I believe, are the three people who are involved with it, but they're not really related. But basically, they were playing Red Mage, Dragoon, and Ninja, and Xeno was playing Warrior. That's all you really need to know. They got through the dungeon, they cleared it, they posted the video, and that's kind of where we're at right now. So, the video was posted. It was part of the media tour coverage, and honestly, I don't really think it moved that much. I think it was posted, and people were like, "Cool, that was awesome," but I don't really think I gained any real ground. That was until a post on the official forums was made talking about, how healers are kind of unneeded in content. There's a lot of grievances on them about healer design and why healers are kind of unnecessary, how they're trying to basically eradicate the need for healers, and they basically proclaim for a healer strike. The thread is very popular. Like, let me actually search it up right now. I should have had it pulled up. It should be on the official forums, yes. So this thread right now is 456 pages. It's made on the 8th. And it is still ongoing. Posts are still being made today and everything. So I want to talk mainly about both sides first, so we get a proper idea. So and I'll give my opinion on it because I do have an opinion. This is not going to be a fence-sitting argument. This is going to be a one-sided thing, but I want to look at both sides to get an opinion. So I'm going to start with the Raider scene. So the Raiders are viewing this more so as a complaint from the casual side. People who don't really know that healers are important in endgame content, and some people are clowning on this thread. Some people are, not taking it seriously. Some people are posting like, "Hey, you can do this content with no healers in other forms," and people are saying this has been a thing since Stormblood. Basically, they're just trying to. The main point, and there are some people who are doing it, just to clown, and I get that ground, but I think the general thing is it's a misunderstanding from the casual player base that they're not really understanding the importance of healers in this content, because even Xeno in his video, and I'm gonna refer to Xeno's video a lot because Xeno does actually he looked at this thread and he looked back at the video. So it's a lot of things. So he's looking at the video in post, and the post video is probably the most important one, I would say, to pay attention. The actual video content is just all you need to know the context. They did the dungeon with it, and in the dungeon, I will state this for a future thing, some of the DPS do die, and the Red Mage rests them. That is all you really need to know about the content. But the Raider scene is definitely looking at it as it's not really a big deal, and there are much other issues with healers to worry about. Mostly involving like offensives, which they slowly seem to be working back into. But again, I'm gonna leave this all as a side thing. This is not really my opinion yet. This is just the general viewpoint of everything. Um, so to that end, I want to focus more so on the reason the strike is going on, the general consensus, and this is where most people have been campaigning to this manifesto. So the main complaints that the main poster Gemina has about this are self-sustaining healing abilities are given to other roles, which essentially what that means is just certain jobs are getting support to help them out. Like for example, there's skills like Bloodbath, which have been a constant in the game since Stormblood, but I think more so this is applying to like let's put a more recent example, like Arcane Circle, Arcane Crest for Reaper. When it pops, it gives a heal. Stuff like that, I think. Cure and Physic are also part of it too, but I would not weigh Physic at all on this. But the message they're trying to mean is that it's going both ways. All these skills are going to other jobs. Like Magic Barrier, for example, for Red Mage is the defensive and all that, which also improves healing. Oversimplified DPS rotation, and they're saying it's just filler GCD and then no role in the game punishes the skill more than healers. And offensive ability should still feel dynamic and rewarding. Homogenization of healer jobs, that barrier heals feel is redundant. All healers play the same. Excessive OGCD heals. And lack of engaging content outside the most difficult duties. Savage Ultimate, a threat level is too low. And that's mainly what the strike is kind of parading for this. So, again, I'm looking at it from that angle. A lot of people are... In the thread, there are a fair amount of people who are agreeing with this, and they do feel like they are, being betrayed, that healers are not getting the support they need. And, yeah, some people are literally saying, I'm canceling my sub, or lots of things, and, yeah. It's pretty up there. So, now that we're kind of looking at both sides, the raider scene and the casual scene, I want to talk about my opinion, because it's probably the most important in this video context. So, I am a raider. I do all forms of content, ultimate, all that stuff. I do not main healer. I have done healer in Savage for Pandemonium P1 through 3. I was going to do 4, but I'm doing that. But I did those on content. So, and on White Mage in P3, which if you know from a rating scene, White Mage back then, before the Lily Bell buff, was not recommended to play in that fight. You would always play Astro, and that would kind of be it. So I'd say I have experience healing in higher content, not ultimate content, but definitely in Savage content. But I have played tank, and I played DPS, so I'm very used to other people playing healer. When I was raiding, I would listen in on healer discussion and understand where it's important. And I also have talked to healers outside the content that we've done and kind of get opinions on it. And I've heard which fights are good, which fights are bad. So some of those complaints are going to be related to this, to the casual post for it. But in my opinion, if people want to do a strike, it is totally fine. Like, it is your time, it is all you. Like, no one's gonna dissuade you from saying you should not do it. However, looking at it, I feel like it's not like in a situation of just like people dunking on it just because, oh, you're dumb, you don't understand. I think it's just more so like misconceptions, but they seem to have understood like certain parts of it. But I think it's just this situation is an outlier, right? The doing a dungeon with one tank, no healer is like pretty common. Like, it's been a thing going on. I remember I would do it with people in my group in Shadowbringers, like doing lots of stuff. Warrior is really good for it, but you can do it with other jobs too. I have done it on Gunbreaker before. I remember doing Grand Cosmos on Gunbreaker back when that was current, and that was actually pretty fun. But yeah, it's very scary. Paladin also can do it reliably too, just because it already has self heals. Especially in Endwalker content with Paladin getting like the huge sword combo that restores that HP and everything. Like Paladin has a lot of regens. Dark Knight, you probably can't do it as reliably just because they don't really have a self regen, but like, you know, it this is something that like you'd have to construct. This is not a normal thing that happens. And I feel like the issue is that the healers are looking at this because this is a situation that's brought into limelight. This is officially like an event sanctioned by Square Enix and Yoshi P and everyone posting it. And this is one of the main feeds. So a lot of people are getting this, and you're seeing a mix of people being like, that's awesome, to people being like, what is the point? And about the other side, about the people being like, what's the point of even having healers in there? Something I really feel is very important, and it's happened since Shadowbringers, is the casual scene and the new player base has grown significantly since Shadowbringers. We're not living in the world of Stormblood, where jobs were like very unique to a point where like you would not have the same experience playing one as it would on the other, like completely. Like your rotations wouldn't line up, there wouldn't be a homogenization, all that stuff. Everything would be different. And healers definitely, like, you had to do a lot of stuff as a healer back in Stormblood. I didn't really play it past leveling when I was playing in Stormblood, but like even as a leveling perspective, like they're all so different. They are all unique, and when you have stuff like cleric stance that also gets involved too, like that adds a whole other layer to the job. And healers are so important back then, just for what it was. And I could definitely see the concept of, you know, why a healer would always be needed with that, because the reality is, and most like raid content and savage content and ultimate content, it is the standard comp. The normal 2 tanks, 2 heals, 2 melee, 2 range. That's the general rule of thumb of how the comps have been for so long. And sometimes you will see variations in that, even in ultimate content, like as we are right now, in Endwalker, even in like UCOB, it's you can pick like 3 summoners with like 1 other DPS, and legit it'll be like a world of difference. You know, like the summoners do too much damage. Same with like summoners are so busted in level 70 content, and you don't have to follow that comp really to that level. Other people have done comps that have been like, you know, all tanks or all healers or anything with it. Some people have done 1 healer comps. Like you see a lot of 1 healer clears. There's a 1 healer clear for T. There was 1 hero clear, I'm pretty sure, for DSR. I don't know if there was 1 for top. I'm sure there is. Someone's probably have done it. But like, I'd say in situations like that, when, you know, you are able to do a 1 healer, dude, that healer's on the fucking spotlight right now. Sorry for my language, but like, you're putting a lot of pressure on that 1 healer, especially because they're doing everything on their own. That's not so much it's a credit to the tanks and everyone else who's using mitigation, but the healer is the most important person in that set, because you're basically trading the resources to be like, well, it's all on this one person. You guys can do stuff, but obviously you're still doing your job. It's basically like in many terms, it's probably like a protect the castle type of vibe, where the healer needs to be protected at all costs. Even my group, for example, right? In Shadowbringers, my group did a 4 tank, 4 healer clear of Seed of Sacrifice EX, right when it was current. Fights like that are scripted to a certain point where the roles are different affect it completely different. Like, you will have different mechanics, or random people will be picked because of how it was. So you would sometimes have to make new strategies to work around that. And definitely have that. I have the clear of that on my channel, twitch.tv/noamsever. It's one of my longer highlights, but like that's a really cool clear. You don't actually get to see it, but there was a lot of interesting ways of how to work around, you know, like where meteors fall down because roles are different. You don't have the exact roles, so you have to do stuff that's different. The point I'm saying is that it's the concept's kind of been like definitely broken away from what we're kind of used to with the standard comp. So when you see stuff like this, many people in the raid scene or even just advanced players kind of know that you can do stuff like this. It's not too crazy of an accomplishment, and especially in dungeons, trials, we see enough dungeons where everyone else but the tank dies and the tank freaking solos it. And those moments are awesome. They take a while, but they're awesome. But like it's a testament to that even under any situation, as long as there's not like an enrage, any like comp like that, as long as they can survive it, can do it. So to that end, like the reason I bring up Shadowbringers more so is because a lot more people have been playing the game since then. Shadowbringers was probably the expansion, and there are polls, there are surveys that have done this that have shown that most people started playing the game in Shadowbringers, which makes sense. It was the most advertised expansion during the time. It was everywhere. You freaking had Tom Holland in a freaking advertisement for it. It's nuts. But like, it pushed a lot of people to play the game in multiple ways. And switching around, it was also the expansion that did the healer barriers, the healer split, or started to work its way down to being like, well, this is how we're considering it now. It also simplified tanks. It also simplified a lot more things, made it, and that's when the homogenization, which I think is a legitimate complaint, is. But I feel like at the same time, the people who are playing now are looking at the stuff in Dawntrail, and we're seeing things return, like healer DPS skills. Some of them are tied to like certain skills, like Scholar's new one coming off Chain Stratagem, which isn't a constant. But the concept, the more so, it's they're getting skills to do damage. So we're slowly, but surely, working our way backwards, kind of to like the Stormblood Heavensward area of managing this stuff. Sage is a perfect example getting Miasma 2, because Miasma 2 wasn't a thing in Shadowbringers at all. Shadow Flare was also taken out too, so Scholars didn't even have that. Like, there's a lot of stuff that was taken out, for the record. And they have shown that they're willing to like work with that. Remember when Energy Drain was taken out during Shadowbringers, and enough Scholars complained to bring it back? Like, they are able to listen to that, and they do recognize at certain points, like, this is something that needs to be done. And as far as I know, Energy Drain is still in Dawntrail. Like, it's still a thing. It stayed a constant. It stayed a constant in Endwalker because they know that this stuff's really important. For the healer DPS stuff. I know that certain communities don't really feel that healers need to DPS. Yoshi PS said at times that healers should not need to DPS. But I feel like now we're seeing it more and more where it is a constant. You know, it is something that is being rectified. Even the role quests in Shadowbringers and Endwalker have healers DPSing. It's just how it is. Because it's funny because when you think of someone who doesn't do that, you look at a character just standing there, waiting, instead of like a job that's acting. So I think when you look at characters just like standing there, like just not doing anything, you know, you're kind of like, maybe you should move and do that. And we feel that at times. You can see that. There are frustrations sometimes we get a healer who doesn't do anything in content. But on the same coin, like, it's being reinforced now through main story stuff, which is good. I like to see that. And one complaint that they definitely had with it was the lack of engaging content outside the most difficult 2 days Savage Ultimate, i.e. threat levels too low. On that end, it's definitely a gimme that dungeons, trials are pretty much like the bottom line for content, and normal raids are like literally the bottom line. Not much content has challenged the community to that level. To me, if I had to break down each thing by expansion that I have played, which is from Stormblood, Zeno brought this one up during his stream when he was talking about it. But the burn was definitely a fight where a lot of people would wipe constantly. Because there comes to a certain point, not so much damage, but also like player experience. You know, some people are going to notice. And it happens a lot where people just don't really learn until they kind of do it enough, which is fine. You know, that's just a constant. Especially when you're doing the content when it comes out, that's the most common thing that you get. But when you look at Shadowbringers, I'd probably say the one fight that definitely was, or one dungeon for sure, that was really like rough was probably Dawn Meg. Meg and yeah, probably and Grand Cosmos. I'd probably say are the only two that like really come to mind of like a fight, like a dungeon that was like relatively hard. But that's only if you like pushed it to that level of a wall to wall, which is I'm pretty sure is a standard now, even for the casual communities. I think I kind of understand that it is full wall to wall. But like that kind of leads back to this argument of like healers can heal all that stuff. So what I mean by that is just if you want to be challenged in like a dungeon setting, there are options now. We have Criterion. Criterion definitely is like a huge push for that, even though Criterion says it's not Savage. It pretty much is Savage. Um, Field Ops, even like Boja, all that stuff under that umbrella, Baldessian Arsenal, anything like that, you know, that's really going to push your healers to the level. It doesn't take away from a simplified rotation, but I think for many, the bigger problem when it comes to the simplified rotation is if we work our way slowly back to that Stormblood Heavensward era where there was more options for that, it'll make the healer player base a bit more excited because like, oh, I get new tools that can help out. Because from a raiding scene, right? If you have people who know what they're doing in a fight, the difficulty just because it's like, no, it becomes really boring for a healer because guess what you're doing? You're able to figure out everything. You know, when this thing's up, I do this. When this thing's up, I do this. There's not too much variety past that. The variety in the healing plan comes when someone dies, you're doing recovery, or something happens unexpectedly. Those are like probably the three cases I think of when a healer does that. And even then, if your fight does a lot of damage and you have to frantic heal, that shakes up the healers. That makes it more exciting. Like, oh wow, I can actually do something a bit more investing. Because that's really how fights should be made. If you want a really good fight recently that I think does a really good job of that, I'd probably say P10 and P12 Phase 1 are both really good fights for that. Both of those fights kind of make every job have to do something a bit chaotic, but especially for the healers because there's so much damage going out. The arena setups, at least for 10, make it a bit more exciting to do all that stuff. And everyone's kit becomes so useful in stuff like that. So it really shows. So we need more fights kind of like that push it, because if it gets to a realm of exactly what's going on, then it becomes boring. And then that's when these complaints of simplified rotation, lack of engaging, like homogenization really show. Because if I'm doing doses, and they're also doing glare, what's really the difference between us at this point, past whatever kit we have, if we're able to go through the fight normally? Like what makes this different than the other? The style? White Mage uses a staff, Sage uses like the Nulifs. That goes to a certain level, but like you need to have some more variety with it all past like just the standard job gauge, especially when it comes to that level of content. So I'm definitely in support of the raid player base. Start reading this up. Well, yeah, I'm definitely in support of the raid player base because I do believe that the raid player base is on the better end with the experience, but I will not like dunk on the casual players who are in support of this strike because to their angle, this is all they see. They don't really get to move from that. If anything, instead of like, being like, you dumb, ha, or like trolling, we should really be trying to aim more for like, hey, I understand why you mean like that. Let me explain this side in a proper discussion. And then they can look at it on that end. And the most important thing that I've been taking from this is the casual player base is huge. Like, you gotta remember, since Shadowbringers, where it started to be the push for trusts and lots of casual like content to more enjoy the story and everything, this is something that you don't really see that often. So the player view is limited in scope, that most players just look at healer as like this is required. So when you take that outside the norm and you post about it, and then you just kind of be like, ha, you like dunking, then you know what the opinion becomes less true, you know? Like to them, they just look like, oh, this is just an attack. When in reality, it's like, no, well, this is how it is, but this dungeon, like just doing a dungeon, is very low bar entry. It's not a huge accomplishment. It's just something cool that you can do. If you really want to see how healers are in action, let me show you this one healer clear, or let me show you this all healer clear. There's a lot of all healer clears that are run in like alliance raids and everything. You know that you can find the communities that are doing it, and they're more than happy to take everyone along. You know, you won't die. You don't ever like have a heal issue. But like there needs to be more of this back and forth discussion. I understand that it's really easy to jump into being like dunking on someone for not having that opinion. This is mostly from a rating perspective to a casual perspective. You know, I feel like this is the bigger thing. If they don't really pay that much attention to that scene, a raider is going to know what a casual player does. Casual players aren't going to know what a raider does. So if you find someone who's having that, just try to have the discussion and not be like, you know, whatever, but like try to be more supportive. Like, hey, I want to talk to you about this. You know, if you're having questions, I'm more than happy to ask. If they want to take that conversation with you and discuss it, then go for it. Like, I don't see a problem with that. Hell, it's better to be more supportive in a community, especially with the casual players, because the reality is the casual raiders of today can become the casual like players of today can become raiders the next. You know, there comes a point where they want to try and go outside that realm, and that's really cool. You know, so like I think it's better to just have this conversation. If it works out, it works out. But if not, like don't feel too hard pressed about it. And just let them have their stuff. That's why a lot of people are just saying, if you want to have the healer strike, that's fine. And a lot of people are saying, I'm gonna step up and heal as well, just to cover it, you know? Like you're having healers like feel that their opinion's justified by also doing this, which is cool. It's nice to see healers like be in support of it because on both sides. They understand what their role is and they do all that stuff. I understand what it is, even though I'm not a main healer. But like I can still understand the importance of it. So I'm very much in it. I want to support both sides, but I'm definitely if it had to ask me like an honest opinion about what I really feel, it's definitely gonna be from the raider perspective, where it's just not really understanding the importance of healers and it's just that conversation needs to be had. And if the casual like player base also wants to talk about this stuff too, I'm more than down to discuss that. I think it would be cool to talk to people about that, but it needs to be a two-sided conversation. It can't just be a one-sided, this is how it is, deal with it, because that goes nowhere. Instead, that just makes people angry on both sides. Even the casual player base says it's just like this, deal with it. The raiders are going to be upset too. Like there's going to be no fun, so you need to be more open about it. So that's my take. Hope you enjoyed.